Private members' business, notice number 3, Veterans of the Vietnam War.
I call the member for order.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I move the motion relating to Vietnam Veterans Day in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. Mr Deputy Speaker, Vietnam Veterans Day is held on the 18th of August every year and commemorates the service and sacrifice of the almost 61,000 Australians who served in the Vietnam War, including the 521 killed and the 3,000 wounded. Vietnam Veterans Day was, until 1987, known as Long Tan Day, which originally commemorated the service of the 108 personnel of D Company 6th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, 6RAR, who on 18th of August 1966, with limited supplies in torrential rain, successfully fought off 2,000 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong troops in a rubber plantation off the village of Long Tan. Long Tan Day came about on the 18th of August 1969, 3 years after the Battle of Long Tan, when veterans of 6RAR gathered at the site to raise a cross and commemorate their fallen comrades. Australia's engagement in the Vietnam War had troop numbers winding down from late 1970 and a complete withdrawal by December 1972. The Royal Australian Air Force returned to Vietnam in April 1975 to conduct humanitarian missions, specifically the evacuation of South Vietnamese civilian refugees and orphans, which concluded on the 25th of April 1975 with the evacuation of the Australian Embassy. By 1972, for all but a few, the Vietnam War was over. But what many Vietnam veterans didn't realise at the time, and over the preceding decades learned through painful experience, was that there were new battles waiting for them at home. Many of Australia's servicemen returned to Australia with little fanfare or recognition, let alone gratitude. And what they experienced in the subsequent months and years ahead was a contemptuous and unwelcoming reception from the Australian public. Many faced vilification upon their return to Australia, even from some politicians, tarred by stereotypical representations of the Vietnam War, particularly those popularised in American film. Some Australians laid blame for the Vietnam War, including Australia's decision to enter it, at the feet of returned servicemen. Veterans were accused of genocide, murder and rape, precisely the things that they had gone overseas to try to prevent. For those who had sustained injuries, physical and psychological, or who had lost friends in the war, these accusations took a serious toll on their morale and mental well-being. Unfortunately, to this day, many have never fully recovered. Over time, Long Tan Day was increasingly recognised and commemorated by all Vietnam veterans, and in 1987, Prime Minister Bob Hawke, following the Welcome Home Parade for Vietnam veterans, announced that Long Tan Day would be known as Vietnam Veterans Day. On that day, 25,000 Vietnam veterans marched in Sydney to a reception of several 100,000 members of the public. The commission of a national memorial for the Vietnam War in 1992 was another important step forward in recognising the service of the 61,000 Australians who fought in Vietnam and the sacrifice of the 521 who never came home. It is to our eternal shame that it took us so long as a nation to recognise the service of those 61,000 Australians, including the 19,450 young men who were conscripted. And while we have come a long way since 1972, there is more to be done. Mr Deputy Speaker, on the 18th of August every year, thousands of Vietnam veterans and their families attend commemorative services throughout the country. However, the experience of many veterans is that Vietnam Veterans Day is still little known and seldom commemorated throughout the wider community. And some veterans, because Vietnam Veterans Day is not an officially gazetted national day of commemoration, struggle to persuade their own RSL sub-branches to hold a ceremony. Mr Deputy Speaker, I believe that the time to officially gazette Vietnam Veterans Day is long overdue. Next year will be the 30th anniversary of Vietnam Veterans Day, and it would be wonderful to see the day gazetted in time for that anniversary. Officially, gazetting Vietnam Veterans Day will ensure that it is commemorated widely across Australia. Mr Deputy Speaker, gazetting Vietnam Veterans Day would cost the government nothing, but it would mean so much for our surviving Vietnam veterans and the memory of those who are no longer with us. I take this opportunity to call on the Prime Minister, the Minister for Defence and the Minister for Veterans Affairs to take action to officially gazette Vietnam Veterans Day as a national day of commemoration. I commend the bill to the chamber.
Thank you.
Motion.
Is there a second?